Good morning, Wisconsin. We are happy to have you all for another exhilarating episode of Beyond the Pail. We will be discussing school safety today, and throughout the year, we're just excited to have a variety of topics that you guys can attend for free, get an opportunity to get some learning in without leaving the comfort of your own desk. So I know this is a crazy time of year with wrapping up summer restoration, and some of us are already starting school today. So wherever you're at, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jeremiah Johnson. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for the Muskego-Norway School District. With us today, as always, is Joe. Joe, introduce
Good.
yourself.
Yeah, good morning. Joe Ledvina from the School District of La Crosse, the Director of Facilities. And so grateful to have you here today. We are one of those schools that started school today. So it's always an exciting day to get kids back in school and kind of get in that normal routine. So thank you for joining with us today.
Right on. And each time we host, we love to have a guest speaker or a resident expert around the state or nation. And today we have Trish Kilpin from the Office of School Safety. Trish, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely thrilled to be here.
Right on. So we're going to tackle school safety. Before that, we just wanted to give a shout out and a plug for all of the opportunities for facilities people around the state to plug in. Not only do we do this Beyond the Pale thing, if this is your entryway into professional development, that's awesome. But we've just finished 4 custodial conferences all around the state. So we just want to thank all of our hosts that hosted conferences, the hundreds of custodians that got out and got professional development. Paired with that, all summer long has been a building lead certification module. So for anybody that's inspired to move from custodian into a head custodian role, this is a great, very specific program for them. And then for those of us that are directors, facility manager certification is almost something that you need to do. I've gone through it, Joe's gone through it.
Yeah.
We help teach it, and it is a great program. If you want to go very deep, like get laser sharp with a specific topic like budgeting, WASBO now is partnered with UW Green Bay for some very deep learning. So if you want to learn about one of those topics and get really ingrained into like a project and how to manage that, please consider joining one of those. We have a couple of awesome conferences coming up. Next on deck is Facilities Masters Conference. Hopefully we'll see you all there. And if you want to join your business managers in some learning, the risk management certification is always a good in-depth learning. So thank you to all of those that have learned and led through those. And thank you to Danielle, our PD coordinator, for putting all this programming together.
And I'll
All
just say,
right. Well, yeah.
Jeremiah, if I could just add to that, if you haven't been involved in those things, great trainings, but more importantly, it's getting to know your counterparts across the state. And so sometimes that's the most valuable part of being a part of those courses and those classes.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So Trish, any just overall news? Maybe tell us about your role and then some of this other
Yeah,
great info.
sure. Glad to do it. I am the director of the Office of School Safety. I was appointed to the position by the Attorney General in 2022. Prior to that, I was over 30 years in the schools as a school social worker. Um, Recently, we've had some changes amongst our staff. Cheryl Johnson, who many of you might know as the Crisis Response and Recovery Specialist, she has been instrumental in getting kids back to school, getting staff back to learning after school shootings here in Wisconsin, after pretty serious incidents. She is now the deputy director. She's been named as such a week ago. And so we'll be doing some hiring. We'll be having a crisis response recovery specialist opening that we'll be posting. We are hiring for a resource center analyst for SUSO, which we'll talk about later. And then our behavioral threat assessment and management specialist, Sue Williams, is retiring in December. And so we'll be planning for that. So there'll be some opportunities if you know people who would be good fit for those roles in these statewide positions. Our BTAM app has launched, and so that is a way for people to use the behavioral threat assessment tools that we've developed, use them to Fidelity, have a portal to input them and then download them locally. People are using that. We're getting a lot of great feedback. We also switched to add virtual training, similar to what you were just talking about, Jeremiah, that like, things like this are more accessible to people. So we have our full day behavioral threat assessment training offered virtually. And then we were awarded an Office of Violence Prevention grant. We're working really fast because we have to spend the monies by the end of December and have a product by the end of December. But we are creating content videos of our training in behavioral threat assessment that will be accessible to people without having to leave their home or their office. And then we also are creating PSAs and introductory lessons and explainers for law enforcement, for school staff, and for kids and families on SUSO. And those are all going to be professionally produced here in Wisconsin, and we should have them available by January 1st.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much for your work on all this, and for our facilities folks on. Sometimes I hear these acronyms and I'm like, what are we talking about here?
Thank you for calling me out on that.
No, it's good. I do it all the time to my people. So a threat assessment is in the event that a student or a teacher or somebody outside makes a threat to you. Maybe it's through graffiti, a phone call, or in person. Like, what do you do with that information, and how do you assess that it's legit? And where do you go from there? So thank you for talking about that.
Yeah.
Joe, would you be willing to share, like, all of us, we try to have safety teams. They might look a
Yeah.
little different. We might operate differently, but what does your school safety team look like?
Yeah, our safety team looks very much like what we have up here. We have members from administration, obviously buildings and grounds, and we have Ann Endries from our office who chairs the safety committee. And so that really works well. We have athletic directors, nurses, technicians, student services, police and fire, special education. All of them are part of that process. We have about 20 members, and I think some people might think that's a bit much. But the one thing that's not on here that we have is we have our emergency management person from the county. And so they are a big piece of that puzzle because not only do we run this meeting together, but then it connects us with the local school districts around us, surrounded by us as well, on Alaska, West Salem, Holman. And so it brings all those pieces kind of together, but looks very much like this. We don't have our superintendent on there, but he's updated on a regular basis of what's going on with that process. How about yours, Jeremiah?
Yeah, very similar. The one thing that I really do like about having a variety of voices is, like, I get calls maybe on a monthly basis from a parent or a staff member saying, you guys need to try this device or do this thing or whatever it is. And I appreciate all those messages, but it's not just up to me to make a decision. So what I do is I send out the agenda ahead of time and say, hey, pop on there anything we want to talk about safety wise, and we're going to tackle these topics. It's not on the agenda. We're not going to talk about it. But then I can respond to the parent or whoever's expressing concerns that our safety team took up this item and work through it.
Yep.
And we'll also work on projects together. So we try not to take on too much. So might form a subcommittee to say, hey, let's do raptor alerts this year or whatever it is. So this group tackles, a good amount of work together. And then at the end of the meeting, we just use a running Google Doc to track our minutes. I'll share that with the leadership team and say, hey, here's our minutes for our meeting. Please check in. If there's any action items that the schools need to do, they see that there. Did have one interesting question beforehand. We were talking about what happens if a student wants to join, or you want to have a student rep. Like, Trish, have you dealt with this before?
Yeah, in terms of student voice and the impact that these decisions have on students, carefully selecting a student or two to be part of this committee. And I know it's a thing that might give people some anxiety, but also a parent to be part of this team, to be making those decisions. I'll tell you, a really good example of how this worked well was seen in Mount Horeb. After their incident that occurred, they wanted to make sure that they were on top of all things school safety, of course. And I had talked through with them the process of having a coalition for school safety similar to this, so that you'd have different people from the community. They had 9 different members, representative of construction, of all different parents that volunteered to serve on this committee. And they decided at the end, and I was at their school board meeting where they gave their report, that it was no one device that was going to make our school safest. It's making sure that we have the foundational things done, that we're making, kids feel safe, that we're having locked doors, that there's the things that are more basic, as opposed to some technology that's going to sell us a product that's going to make us all safe. And it was really cool to watch this group give that report and all buy into it.
Trish, I like that idea because we have student reps on our school board. And
Yeah.
what happens is a lot of times when they have an opportunity at the board meeting, they'll bring up concerns that they may have with the school board. And so this is one connection that also would work. I like that philosophy. Yeah. And
As
the
far
other
And I
as
do
thing,
want to get back to what you said about emergency management, Joe. I think that is one of the key successes. When we have seen school shootings, crisis events that have occurred, that relationship with emergency management is foundational. And what we know is that when people have a pre-existing relationship and they're not meeting their emergency management person for the first time in a crisis, things go much better in terms of the trust that is there, the understanding of each other's roles. And so we we are investing some time in presenting at the statewide emergency management conferences about school safety and why it's so important to be partnering with your schools.
yeah, we've had a long-standing relationship with them, and they've always been a part of our safety committee for a long, long time. Jeremiah, the other thing I think is that's really beneficial that we use, good example would be Ann Endries was working on card access. And so what are the access levels that we have coming into our school? And she's sharing that with me. And I said, this is the type of thing you take to the safety committee because it gives you a lot of different perspectives. And sometimes we forget about things, even though that's what we're focused on. There's things that we don't think of. And so I think that's the biggest part of that process too.
Yeah, right on. As far as durations go, we usually meet every other month and we meet for about an hour and we try to keep it tight. And again, if it's not on the agenda, we try not to spiral because any topic safety related can take you far off course.
Yeah. We meet quarterly and then if there's a time in between that you need to bring people together, we'll do that as well.
Right on. So let's talk about something super practical, things that we all have to do, we should be doing, and it's probably been doing for 100 years plus, drills. So I might learn a couple things here because I listed things on top and there might be some more information on the bottom. So we have our regular fire drills that we do. And as monotonous as this becomes, it's interesting. You skip one or you don't do one, say in August because there's no kids there, and then you go to do your first one in September, and for some reason something doesn't work. Minimally, maybe everybody's got this motion down, but you're just testing the system too to make sure that it's going to work when it needs to. So fire drills are still important. School violence drills, weather drills, medical drills. Trish, can you walk us through what we have to do? What is the minimum that we should be doing at every school throughout the state?
Yeah. We worked with DPI and WISCA to come up with this graphic that represents the required drills and what can be substituted. I think it's important when we're talking about fire drills, we're pretty obvious that we know what that is. We've been doing them a long time. But the school violence drills, that could be anything that prepares people and has them ready if an incident were to occur. So it's not limited to an active shooter. It could be doing a secure, or it could be a lockdown. It could be a hold. Even it's something that you're doing to increase automaticity of people's ability to know what to do in a crisis event. So some of the drills don't get reported to us. Some of those get reported to other places like DPI. Like for example, the fire drills are not sent to us. But one of the school safety submissions is to submit that you've done drills and that your school board has evaluated the drill. So it's not really just signing off on it. It's like what happened. The drill's purpose is to practice your emergency operations plan, to practice that school safety plan, an aspect in it. And then you should always have feedback afterwards if there's things you need to improve in the plan or in your procedures.
Um, so Joe, what do you, are you, as far as like school violence drills, are you doing like, you do one in fall and then you do one in spring? Like, how does that look for you guys?
Yeah, we do them. Most of them are we at the elementary level, we haven't included the kids per se. We do them twice a year, one at the beginning, one toward the end, obviously, but we're a little bit more delicate with the younger kids for sure. Um, and so that's kind of how we do it. More of a tabletop, more of a low key type of thing. But we do go to the offsite places that we need to go to. So, in other words, where would we go if we had to evacuate? We did a big drill this last year with I talked about the county representative. We did a big drill in La Crosse last year, and so we had representatives from all the other school districts around us who witnessed ours, and then they did theirs as well, and we witnessed each one of theirs. So it gave us an understanding of how people were conducting them, and we were learning from each other. So um, that was kind of a new thing that we did last year, and so we're a part of their drills for observation and input, and they were part of our drills for observation and input.
One thing that kind of irks me a little bit is if our schools, go a little bit late on their school violence drills or incidents. Sometimes say you got a kid that's coming into sixth grade, they're not used to your school, or maybe they're new to your school district. To wait from September through November, December to do your drill is kind of tough. So we've tried to like communicate to our staff, like, please do these things early in the school year versus waiting until then, because if something happens during the first half of the school year, you haven't even trained on it. So
Yeah.
have you guys had any issues like that too?
Jeremiah, it's indelibly in my mind that I was able to go to the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas building and walk that crime scene. And they had never trained on drills. And their incident occurred on Valentine's Day. So they had not practiced this at all. And we have to remember the purpose of a drill. The purpose of a drill is to increase automaticity so that people know what to do so that they're safer if an incident were to occur. And so, yes, yes, and yes, early often doesn't have to be scary. In the Wisconsin statute, in the language, it does say to do a drill without previous warning. But later in the statute, it states that if it's in the best interest for those who are planning the drill, if it's in the best interest of that community to provide previous warning, that they can. I'm here to tell you, we should not be doing drills where kids really think that they are under attack. We do not, that unfortunately, we have kids in our classrooms here in Wisconsin that have been in schools where school shootings have occurred in recent years. So we need to always be providing advance warning of that. We need to go on and say, this is a drill, this is a practice. You don't need kids texting their parents saying that they potentially are going to die. So things of that nature. They have all kinds of impact in an adverse way. So I hope that people are doing this early and often. A great resource is from Safe and Sound Schools on how to do those drills that document that. There's a new article that was recently published. It's that third edition of the Best Practice in Armed Intruder Drills that that they've changed their name and modified it to be less scary. But it all goes really deep into how to plan these drills in a way that are effective and trauma informed.
Yeah. If I can add that, one of the things we found for people who may not be doing drills, and Trish, I'll ask you and Jeremiah, have you seen the same thing? It's kind of become an expectation now. Where when we first started these drills, there's some apprehension on, getting kids involved. And now the expectation is from our parents and other groups, are you doing them? Have you seen that same kind of transition in your communities as well?
Yeah, for sure. And actually, a question came through on the panel question around just that. And so to answer that, and anybody else that wants to throw stuff, put it in the chat, please, and we'll answer it as it comes. Yeah, for us too, we have students with significant needs, so we've always been like, we need to get these kids, out of the school safely. Some of them have like auditory disabilities where an alarm is going to like really trigger them too. So like due to that, we let our staff know that we're doing drills, and maybe we should with some, maybe we shouldn't, but we just have started doing that over the last decade. Like we're doing a drill today. Nobody has to freak out. So
Yeah.
You're right. I think that's smart. I think
Yeah.
that's great. And instead of us thinking about it like we have kids with different functional access needs, and instead of figuring out like how are they going to respond to the drill, we have to figure out ways that they're going to be successful in the drill, because we've also seen that at Sandy Hook. We saw that in other instances where you have kids left like in a wheelchair in a vestibule or something of that nature. So absolutely, our special education staff really knows the kids and they're great at it, and so we have to give them opportunities to scaffold the learning of students with auditory sensitivities, of other, maybe behavioral rigidity, where a drill would be difficult for them. Instead of having them excluded from it, we need to have them practice more so that they're ready and it can be successful for everyone and everyone is safe.
Yeah.
Right on. So just trying to put this as practical as possible. And I know a lot of districts, the person managing this process a little bit different. I do believe there's a law that says every district has to have a safety coordinator. So it might be a principal, might be a superintendent,
Mhm.
or it might be facilities. So thinking about where do we keep our safety plans, our drill information, like how is that housed? And from like the Office of School Safety's like professional opinion, like how should we be tracking all of this stuff? If you have a safety plan, where should it be? And
Yeah.
if you have your drills, how do you want to see them?
You know, Obviously, submissions are due in Wisconsin January 1st of each year. And of the 5 requirements that people have to share with us, you don't have to wait till January 1st to get your 2027 things in. If they're ready and get them up in the folder and you're done. Um, we want these plans to live, right? They're just not on paper and then they're put away in a binder with dust on them. We want the drills to be practicing all of the elements that you've outlined. Yes, you have to have school safety training. Yes, you need to be reporting your violence drills and things. But those school safety plans, we do get open records requests for them. And people will ask us, as an example, has Muskego-Norway made their submissions as they're expected to? And we redact things within that emergency operations plan because that should not be public. All of the steps that you take if an emergency were to occur. But I think the public at large, parents at large, really do need to have an understanding that you're prioritizing this, that you're confident that you do have a plan, and that it's been practiced enough where people can implement it as needed.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you that question. Your reunification, where that transpires, probably should not be a public. Is that your understanding as well, Trish?
Absolutely. And I'm going to challenge one thing, and this is just something that has come up a lot lately across the nation, is that we're moving away from calling it reunification, even though in our statutory language it says you have to have a reunification plan, really calling them, family assistance, that kind of things. But as we're talking about it today, yes, you have to have a reunification plan. I'm really disappointed to say that that is still an area where many schools are not including it in their plan. You're having these after hour events. I saw some resources that you all have on that, but there are specific elements that need to be included, and unfortunately people are not hitting that benchmark. So we're trying to provide them with training and opportunities to grow those areas because they are required in their plan. So if you tell the parents and if you make it public where your reunification is, it could be a safety hazard of someone intending to cause you harm that may go to that reunification center before you get there. And you'll have parents getting there before you. So I think
Yeah.
the best advice is to practice, to know where you're going, to have those relationships and the time spent. Let's say you're going to reunify at a local church, that you have mapped out in the church exactly where the kids will go, exactly where the parents will wait, exactly where reunification will occur, but that you not publicly disseminate all of that information.
Yeah.
We're going to
Yeah, we,
dive a
we
little
did a
deep.
big reunification drill this summer, at the beginning of the summer. And that was part of what I was referring to earlier. We had all the other districts watching and part of that so they could see it. But we took live students and we asked parents for volunteers. They signed waivers. We had the bus companies involved. We had everybody from all over, and it was really unique. I wasn't a part of that, but I was a part of the evaluation afterwards. And it was really interesting to see the evaluation from law enforcement, from fire, from parents that were involved. And it was a really unique experience. And we know that it's going to be mass chaos no matter how much we try, right? But they gave us some really good feedback so that we could improve our plan.
Yeah, and in an emergency, when a crime has occurred, we saw this after the Abundant Life Christian School shooting. The decisions will be made by emergency management and the incident commander of which is it's usually a joint incident command, but largely law enforcement will be heading up some of those decisions about where that reunification were to occur. So the whatever plan that you come up with, yes, it can be specific to a local spot in your community, but it should be quite adaptable. Like you could, in the Abundant Life Christian School shooting, the Family Assistance Center and the reunification occurred at a medical facility. They shut it down to patients. It was really quite amazing because it's also where the behavioral health staff were. And all of their staff helped in the reunification. I was on site for that, and it was quite remarkable. So transferable to wherever you are.
That's really amazing that a healthcare facility would close down for that.
They canceled all surgeries, all patients,
Wow.
everything. Yep.
Wow.
Didn't get my bunion removed that day. Dang it. I just remember sitting through classes through WISCA a long time ago and hearing reunification. And again, it was one of those words that's like, what are we talking about here? And so just think of, you're managing a school and they tell you, the police tell you, fire, that you have to evacuate. Where are you going to go with, 100 staff members and 600 students? So we're going to dive a little deeper into that in a second here, but just wanted to make sure we're all talking the same language.
Can I ask Trish one question? And have you seen school boards really be involved in this, or have you just seen them kind of sign off? We give them a presentation, they do sign off, and they seem to be more interested than others. But have you seen a best practice from any school boards that kind of stands out,
I think
or
it's our
getting them more involved?
responsibility. Yeah, I think it's our responsibility as school safety experts to educate people. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's easier just to kind of like not think about that
Yeah.
because it's anxiety provoking. And we need to have them build an awareness about the realities that we face in terms of school safety, the decisions we have to make, the requirements that we have, and then put their toe in the water as helping them be partners. What I don't want is for people then to be critical afterwards. Why do we do this? Why do we do that? When that committee, that multidisciplinary
Mhm.
team that you and Jeremiah were talking about, the core planning that you put into a very complex exercise like your reunification, we need people to understand that there's some professional integrity with the decisions that we make.
Yeah. Thank you.
So from a practical sense, we've been tackling drills all morning here. There's so many different things that we have obligations to do. And when I first started in my role, my head was spinning, like, where's everything at? Where is it housed? How do we track it? And so one simple thing we've done, and it's become a system-wide thing for about 15 years now, is to create like a workbook Excel spreadsheet, but it's shared through Google. So it's shared with all the principals, all the head custodians, the nurse, school resource officers. And every school has their own tab. So you'll see on the very bottom of this slide, there's a BLE, which is one of our elementary schools. So this is a very transparent document, which is kind of fun too. So if someone's falling behind, everybody can see it. Within this is anything that we deem that you have to do monthly. So we have our fire drills. We do something called a safety walk, which is just a walk of the school with the principal, the school resource officer, and the head custodian to look at the school from a different lens. And we have an inspection sheet we use for that. Playground inspections. We do tabletop drills, lockdown drills, tornado drills, changing batteries and weather radios, testing different systems. All these things, when you do them once a year, you forget in between, but also just a way to document you're doing them. Fire extinguisher inspections, AED inspections. So just having a simple thing like this that everybody knows to go to helps consolidate it versus everything is everywhere and you're trying to pull it all into one spot. So I found it helpful. It's pretty basic. And I don't know, Joe, what are you using to track all of your
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah. I like your philosophy of we've done it with other things. We haven't done that in the safety arena, but I like your philosophy of everybody being able to see what everybody's doing, kind of puts the pressure on them. We've done
Mhm.
that in utilities, and so they can monitor that. But Not here. No, we have individual forms that they're required to fill out, and then they send them to us monthly. But I really like what you're doing here. I think that's a great way for people to see who's kind of peer pressure is a good thing in this. But no, I love your form. But ours are more individual. We have individual forms for each one of those things that are filled out, sent to Anne. She maintains them, and then we report that to the board.
Nice. Nice. Trish, have you seen anything creative or things that you guys like to see?
Yeah, I just saw it right now in your form.
Oh,
I love it.
Yeah.
I know. And for some of those forms that Joe's talking about, like it doesn't fit in a checkbox, we do link the form that we want them to fill out in there. So each month they attach a link to that form. So you have each month's form completed. And then the drill that we bring to the school board, as far as the violence drill, we have a standard report for each school, which is also a running document. So we're tracking how many students, who was leading, what did we learn type thing. And so it's takes the thought work out of them. They fill in the blank as they go, and then you got a report you can turn in. All right.
Good work, Jeremiah.
Oh, thanks, Joe. So we were talking about this reunification thing a little bit earlier, and it's funny that you guys mentioned keeping it confidential. I know that these things kind of float onto YouTube, these presentations. So I started to paste our thing in there. I'm like, I probably shouldn't do that. But so thinking it through as a school administrator or facilities, thinking about where will you go with hundreds of students in the event you have to evacuate. And so for us this past year, it wasn't an active shooter and it wasn't a bomb threat. It was actually, we had two power outages. And when you have a dark building, what do you do to get kids out and get them home? You'll find, just as Trish noted, that parents start flocking to the building, whether you asked them to or not. So these are just things that are very practical to think about, not necessarily just the crazy crisis that makes the news. So thinking about, do you have an agreement with maybe a nearby church or a fire department or a building where you can just go to stage? And then potentially from there, that might just be your rally point. Then you're going to bus to maybe a different school in your system so you can get kids back to their parents. Where will the parents meet and who's going to communicate that message? Is it going to be your superintendent or a school secretary? And what platform are they going to use? Are you going to put this out on Facebook, or are you going to, put it through your Infinite Campus Messenger? And then thinking about, once the parents get there, which they'll get there quickly, how are you going to check kids out? Are you just going to trust that, Jeremiah Johnson showed up for this kid and you're just going to release them? Or are you going to have a process to validate that they are who they say they are, and get them processed quickly? So this can be done in a variety of different ways. We have a operations manager, Tim Gorecki, did a marvelous job putting together like the whole sequence of events, including like where parents are going to pull into the building, where they're going to walk into the building, where the students are going to be staged, who's going to release them, and that entire process. And until you really go through that exercise, like it's more than you would think until you get it spelled out. So, Joe, you sounds like you learned a ton from your drill. Anything you can share outside of what you already
Yeah,
have?
we have everybody involved, and so our central office, almost everybody in our central office by position has a task to do, and so we're bringing IT has to be a part of that. We're doing verifications from there. We put together, and I shouldn't say we because I have to give Ann Endries a shout out. We have we have several bins that's just used for unification. So we have IDs, we have all the documentation that we need to get. Everything's in a bin, and so we grab that and take it on site with everything that we have, and we've shared that with other school districts as well. But yeah, so everybody has a task, and there's quite a few when you look at all that needs it, nutrition. There's just a lot of things that go into that. So we learned a lot from that process, but we brought people who were experts in that area to help us do the things we needed to do, from the social workers at that reunification site, bringing them off from everywhere, to our nutrition staff, to feeding people if we have to feed people while we're waiting. All those things we learned a lot from that process.
Trish, anything else that we can take away from this?
I think that if you're just getting started in your reunification planning, that's something that would precede the exercise that's quite impressive that Joe just conducted with his team is if you think about where you want to put people, if they're going to have to evacuate the building, then you have to remember that the primary purpose is to account for all people and return children to their parent. And
Yeah.
so, as you're accounting for all people, how do you do that? How do you do that in a way that reduces the chaos? Because if parents just show up at a site and they see their child, they're going to want to run and get them. So you have to have specific places where people are, where their sight lines don't cross. And one of the best exercises that I engaged in early on as I was digging into reunification is going to that site and doing exactly what Joe said, is having these specified areas. But I Love You Guys has a 2-pager where it explains the process of reunification. And they have little icons like the child's going to go here, the parent's going to go here, this is where they're going to, someone's going to reunify them, that kind of thing. And taking those little icons, I cut them out and put them on a map of the church, of the facility. And it was so great because it gave us a better understanding of what we were trying to accomplish and a process to follow. So it's worth spending some time on. And there are always challenges with reunification, but having a plan and trying to practice that plan is way better than winging it.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to share a couple things. Like I think the first part is developing a relationship with a neighboring, and some of us might actually be in the middle of nowhere. So I'm sorry for you if you don't have some place that you can walk to easily. But it's been actually a great partnership tool. So whether it's the church or the public library or wherever it is, you can make these things kind of mutual. So like if we ever have to leave our school, we're going to come to you. But nursing home across the street, if you ever have to evacuate, you can come to us too. So it's helpful in building relationships with a neighborhood community partner in that respect. And the last thing we learned last year when we did this evacuation was it's hard to send kids home on a bus in the middle of the day without their parents knowing that they might be coming early. So what we've done is we send out a form at the beginning of the school year saying, if we end the school day early unannounced, would you like us to send your kid on a bus or would you like to come get them? And if they checked get on a bus, like we still will message to them and try to reach out, but they've at least selected to send them home on a bus. That one was one of the toughest things to get over. Like, do we send them on a bus at 11 o'clock when it's 22 degrees outside and they might get locked out of their house? So, interesting things.
Yes. It's great. It's a great practice and really need to do that because, again, using the bus company, using everything that whoever, all your people bringing them together is really critical. And I think the biggest part of that was the evaluation piece. We literally were in at our location, standing around in a circle, sharing everything that was transpired, documenting that, and it was really beneficial. I was impressed by that.
Yeah. Another thing to establish through these reunification things and even just like incidents in general is like who's in charge? Who's going to be doing what? Joe, you talked about having the bucket full of stuff. We have those too, like tools and vests and clipboards and that stuff. But it's important that people know where they're at in the hierarchy of like, what are you going to do when you're running to that school because there's an emergency? You shouldn't just be haphazardly jumping in. Like you have a role to play. So trying to map out who exactly is doing what in any emergency is kind of helpful. And so if you guys haven't done this exercise, it's fun to do maybe at a leadership team meeting or a cabinet meeting or whatever your safety look is, just to map out what you should be doing in an emergency.
Jeremiah, I have one thing to add, and I know we're low on time, but I just can't help myself. That command staff. So you have the incident commander at top, right? And the command staff is underneath. I really advocate for adding a position to that command staff to have a mental health officer, and that would come straight from the pupil service mental health folks that might be on your school safety team. That mental health officer is different than victim advocates or victim service folks. We have people often from the county level that are doing that work, but when an incident occurs, it can be for a variety of things, of course, that we need to evacuate and reunify. But if an incident occurs, what happens is the kids and the parents now pair school with danger. And before that, they didn't think of school as a dangerous place, perhaps. So, whatever we're doing to make it go as well as possible for people getting coached about how to respond to their children, worries, to making sure that the staff models calm behavior, all of that. It is, the ripple effects of making errors in that way or having chaos or fear permeate the situation is vast, and it's really hard to recover from, and we're seeing that. So I would just advocate for adding a mental health officer as part of the key decision makers.
Appreciate that.
So Jeremiah, what's your role when an emergency occurs?
Well, I've actually, like you, done a practice with the emergency management, and so it was really like, the lay of the land, the electricals, all of the things that can happen inside of a facility.
Yeah.
So really working directly with emergency management, in whatever that looks like. It could be a variety of things. So
Yeah.
I was actually brought in to do a training with the city, and the city had an emergency. It was actually a tornado that blew through town, and they talked about people being killed, and it took out the school, and we're going to reunify here. Like, is this space available? And all of a sudden I'm thrown into it, and you're processing through all these different things. And so I think really from a facility standpoint, we play a pivotal role in
Yeah.
the space management.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to bring out. That's exactly what my role is. It may be on site to help uh, those in control or command making decisions on what's usable, what's not, where can we go, and those types of things. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just going to dive very short on this because it probably deserves its own hour-long session. Active shooter protocols. So for anybody that's been in facilities and schools for better part of a decade, we've seen this major shift from like a traditional cover in the hallway or cover in your classroom in the corner and just be quiet until the drill is done or the incident's done, to the advent of Alice and run, hide, fight. And there's an I love you guys portion of this. The one thing I've been noticing on LinkedIn particularly is like a lot of the national experts are really pressing to go back to the traditional route because it was easier to practice. I'm kind of in this like gray area. Like, I don't know, like it takes so much to turn the ship in a whole system when you've practiced something and this is what we're going to do, to just keep going back and forth. So my message would be whatever you're doing, just be consistent with it and practice it.
Yeah.
It doesn't help anybody to continue to change and do this and do that. And next year it'll be a new thing. So whatever you're doing, get good at it and just think through the potentials of it. And involve your police and your sheriff departments. If you're going to do something a certain way, they should know how you're going to do it so that if they're responding to an incident, they know how you're going to be reacting. If you're telling people you can run and hide and come out of the building, they need to know that that's what they're going to be coming into in a situation like that. Trish, would you like to weigh in on this hot topic?
Gosh, I just can't do it in a succinct way, though.
That's okay.
We only have a few minutes left, and I just want people to remember that all the things we've been talking about today, about the drills and about practicing those things, it makes me nervous actually when I just see active shooter, because it is not the common event. It is not. And so many of the skills are transferable, and our emergency operations plan should be sequential and not have a new thing to do when there's an active shooter. So having a basic tenet of that be the lockdown or the secure, or keeping people out of your building when there's somebody that is armed that's outside. So there's so many portions of it. People have to practice. You can't just be responding in the moment. And I'd ask questions of your law enforcement. Also, sometimes we hear about we should have like locked and out of sight and have lights off, things like that. Your local police department might decide, no, I don't want your lights out. I want your lights on. I want your curtains drawn or not. So you have to have them as part of the building blocks, because they might have a plan that's inconsistent with what we're training for. And that's that coordination. It's going to go way better if we all understand, just like Jeremiah was talking about, everybody's role.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about an important topic. Speak up, speak out. So
Yes.
hopefully Hopefully, a lot of us are using it. It's been something instrumental in Muskego as far as our ability to have an anonymous reporting tool. It's really tough. We thought about doing a homegrown thing probably 5, 6 years ago and having a tip line on our district website. But then we ran into like, what if it's like 1 a.m. on a Saturday and someone doesn't respond to that tip until Monday morning? Now we're negligent because someone reported a threat, someone died, and we didn't do anything about it when we could have. So when this tool came around, it was like a slam dunk, and we continue to use it. So, Joe, you guys actively using it as well?
We actively use this. This is one of the best tools I think that's out there. Um, we, I'm actually, I get those as well as the police liaison officers, administration. There's a variety of people who get those, and they're invaluable. We've, I think, brought a lot of things to our attention that we didn't know about, and we were able to address before something occurred. And so I would encourage, if you're not using this, this is one of the greatest tools out there.
And Trish, can you talk us through the sequence of somebody, they feel threatened or they see a threat or self-harm or whatever the case may be. They go on this website and they submit a tip. Where does it go from there? And then what?
Great question. So each tip has what we call a life cycle. So we have the person trusting us enough to share their concern, and that can be for a variety of topics. On the next slide, you'll see some of the data through July that kind of captures what we're talking about here. The most common tip that we receive is about bullying, is about harassment, and sometimes we've had schools tell us, "Oh, those aren't very helpful. It's not, something that we want reported to us," but it is, because if when we see school shootings, when we see school violence, they start with a grievance, an upset, people feeling maltreated. So if we can solve things early, we're going to be way ahead of the game. We don't want to have to use those reunification plans. We don't want to have an incident occur. So the tipster contacts through SUSO. I am a little worried about the fact that most kids are doing that through their devices, and with the cell phone bans and the way that schools are changing up the way that kids can have access to their phones. We're really encouraging on devices used at school that this is downloaded, that there is an app, that you can download the SUSO app so that kids can utilize it, because most of our tips are coming during the day, during the school day, and then many tips in the evening, like you're talking about, Jeremiah, that where people might not have access to another trusted adult. So that we get the information, we interact with the tipster right away, trying to validate their concern. Sometimes they don't want to talk to us, but other times they do. It looks like a chat. If you're on there, you're able to see it in real time. It's one voice. So if like Jeremiah jumps in and asks a question, like what bathroom is that you saw the threat, the student just sees it as SUSO staff. So there's some customization that's available. Once we gather the information, we share it with the school always that it impacts, but we directly share it with law enforcement when it's a imminent safety hazard or it's a criminal matter. And then we give space to locally for people to use that information as best they can. And then we get like a disposition, what happened as a result. And that's pretty incomplete data because people check a box, maybe they don't check all the boxes, but was parent contacted, was the child helped, that kind of thing. And before the tip is closed. So then we have data. So you would be able to, if you're using it in your schools, you would be able to look at your data and say, we've actually had 40 tips this year, and 32 of them were about bullying. Maybe that should help us with our priorities in terms of what we're going to focus on this next year in terms of our culture and climate.
We actually give a report once a year.
Awesome.
And we include this to the board. So
awesome.
They know exactly the type of tips that we're getting.
Fantastic. If people, you asked about training, and our newsletter will give you, if you're not signed up for our newsletter, this is the QR code to sign up. We have some safety trends that are occurring across our nation and here in Wisconsin that we're providing some really timely opportunities for. We just had one, maybe some of you were there, with FBI about some of the nihilistic violence extremism. So kids who are planning online acts of destruction towards their schools or themselves, how to identify some of those warning behaviors. We really want school psychologists, school social workers, counselors, administrators, you all, to understand the behavior that is before them. And so those kind of things will come up in our newsletter. And then there's another training coming up that on the next slide, Jeremiah, that has become a really significant concern. Kids that are preyed upon online, sextorted. Oftentimes, this is student athletes, students who have a profile online, and we'll be talking about how to identify some of those signs and what to do. Unfortunately, we've had a couple, more than two actually, incidents here in Wisconsin in recent years of kids who die by suicide when they're being sextorted. So they may be groomed to share image of them that includes sexual images, and then use that to blackmail them to pay a ransom or engage in some behavior in order to not release that to the public. So there are ways that we can solve this. We need kids to know if they're faced with a challenge like this, that there's places to turn, including getting the images taken down. Never pay a ransom. So please join us for that one on October 1st if you're able.
This was one that kind of got cringy when we brought it up at our safety team. One of our SROs talked about it. I'm like, I don't know if we want to tackle this, but we did. And we ended up putting these QR codes up in the bathrooms. And I
Good.
kid you not, the next day after the QR code went up, a student reported that they were being extorted. And it was a success story, thankfully, because like you said, you get a picture floating on the web. Like some kids do the unthinkable after that or pay the ransom or whatever it is, but there are resources that can pull that image down and fully help that
That's a
student.
really powerful story, Jeremiah. Like
Yeah, it
you,
is.
by putting those QR codes up there, you're saying this is happening. You're not, you have a place to go, and that's amazing. Saving one child's life is tremendous. So we're at the Department of Justice. We have the Internet Crimes Against Children's Task Force. It's very talented people who are bringing all of this information to us, and they have affiliates within your local police departments who can actually be supportive. And there's materials that you can get with those QR codes, with those things that can be hung on the back of bathrooms. They're all free. So contact your local police department, ask for ICAC materials, or contact the ICAC team themselves or myself, and we'll get you those things so that you can utilize them in your school.
Real briefly, I know there's so many technologies out there. We're all getting hit up by vendors for the newest, greatest trinkets and systems type thing. This conversation is more about behavior, culture, and just trying to create a process for safety in general. But for things that are kind of emerging that I've seen and we're utilizing is door position switches. So a lot of times you'll hear during an active shooter event or school violence, whatever it is, that somebody gets in through an unlocked door. It's pretty easy to retrofit a door to have an alarm on it or to connect that alarm to your cameras, and your cameras can connect to your front office, your SRO, or even send emails with the image of the door prompt so that you get that notification so someone can go lock the door. There is a law that I believe in Wisconsin that says all doors need to be locked, exterior doors, or monitored throughout the school day. So if there's a way to achieve that through technology and reduce human error, that's a cool opportunity. More beyond that, and maybe a little bit more sketch, is weapons detection systems, walk through metal detectors. All of those are very crazy all over the board as far as like their effectiveness. And there's even been lawsuits looking at the efficacy of that because there has been school shootings where people have walked through those things and it hasn't been that effective. So before diving into any technology, make sure that you've fully vetted it and called references and make sure that it's a good fit for your community too. Some of these newer technologies are now getting national attention because of like human monitoring, and should we give our access to our students coming and going to a third party system? So there's a lot of weird, interesting stuff out there, but just a movement of caution before diving too deep into some of these. Joe, are you guys doing anything crazy? Good?
Nothing
Good?
crazy, but I will tell you there's, weapons detection systems that comes up every year from a couple of parents. But our community is not ready for that. And number one, we know that doesn't prevent everything. And so the biggest is human communication, right? Speak up, speak out is a much better tool than I think any weapons detection system can provide for us. And so it's being aware of your surroundings, knowing what's going, having those communication between you and students and staff much more effective than any detection system in my mind.
That's
Trish
a
said,
high endorsement, and we appreciate that. And SUSO is free.
yes.
Yes.
This was about school safety, so you might have joined this like wondering if we were going to talk about any of the other things that we have to do. I just wanted to give a shout out to you all. We're doing so much in our schools, whether you're taking care of security, but these are things too that are on the daily map of like how you're managing chemicals, your weather procedures, injuries, pest management, water quality, lead and asbestos. These are all things that we try to stay out of jail from by doing really well too. So we'll be spending time throughout the year on different topics that might include some of these things too. So thank you all for holding down those items. We're preparing now, whether it's first day of school, your football team's probably kicking off and other sports as well. Uh, I got to give a shout out to our athletic director. He's done a great job of setting the stage for like behavior expectations at a football game. So tomorrow we anticipate 7,000 people in the stands. We have our police department present, tons of parents, volunteers, and staff that are helping. So we really want to make sure that the students and the students that are coming to our school understand the expectations. So he sends out this email ahead of time to their athletic director. And then we talk about like staging what we do in an emergency, where people enter. And really he covers all of the gamut of evacuations and stuff. So I think these are things that are tougher to think about, but there's emergencies can happen any time of day, whether it's during the school day or after. Joe, anything unique you guys are doing to manage? I mean, you have a huge school district. How do you tackle things like this?
Nothing I would call unique, but our police liaison officers are at all of our big athletic events. They're a part of that. They're there, plain clothes, talking to people. They know who they are, but they're there, a part of all of this. And so I think that's a big piece of that. And our athletic directors do a really good job as well of having those expectations. And I think it's funny you talk about these events. A few years ago, we bought a bunch of Speak Up, Speak Out. I know I'm talking about that a lot. Footballs, right? And we were throwing them out at football games, and it really was kind of a fun process to include. It's a good way at the beginning of the school year to get them involved in some of the things that are going on.
Right on. All right. If you are interested in any of the courses that we talked about at the outset here, feel free to follow on here. Usually after we wrap these up, I get a bunch of emails asking follow-up questions, but also they're like, hey, where can we view this again? So if you go to the WASBO website, within a few days, they should have a link to this. It's available infinitely for you guys to review again. We will be meeting. Oh, wait, this was last time advertising this one. We will have another topic coming up shortly. And so just follow your emails for what our next topic will be. Joe and I got together with the WASBO staff this summer and planned out like a whole host of interesting topics that hopefully will resonate with you wherever you're at in your career. Just like to take a moment and say thank you, Trish, for carving out some time to be with us. And thank you, Joe. It's your first day of school and you got occupancy like a half hour before school started, and somehow you're still here. So thank you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. And Trish, I can't say enough to have you a part of this. This was great. Thank you.
Thanks for including me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, thank you, everybody. Good luck on your first days of school, which are right around the corner. And thanks for all you do. We'll see you next time.